The dust had barely settled on Sarah Mitchell's boots when Clayton Burke, the ranch owner, told her in no uncertain terms that she would never ride a single one of his horses, and something in his cold dismissal made her want to prove him wrong more than she had wanted anything in her entire 22 years of life. Sarah had arrived in Laramie, Wyoming Territory in the spring of 1878 with nothing but a worn carpetbag, her mother's silver locket, and a desperate need for work. The advertisement she had seen posted in Cheyenne promised employment at the Burke Ranch for a cook and housekeeper, and after 3 weeks of travel from Kansas City, where her aunt had recently passed away, leaving Sarah alone in the world, she had finally reached what she hoped would be her new home. The Burke Ranch sprawled across thousands of acres of Wyoming grassland, with the mountains rising purple and magnificent in the distance. The main house stood 2 stories tall, painted white with green shutters, far grander than anything Sarah had expected. Outbuildings dotted the property, including a massive barn, several corrals, a bunkhouse, and various sheds. Horses grazed in the nearby pastures, their coats gleaming in the afternoon sun, and Sarah felt her heart lift at the sight of them. She had always loved horses, had learned to ride as a girl back in Missouri before her father died, and everything fell apart. Clayton Burke met her on the porch, a tall man in his 50s with silver, threading through his dark hair and eyes that assessed her with the same calculation he might use when examining livestock. He wore expensive clothes, tailored trousers, and a vest that spoke of wealth, and his boots shone with fresh polish. Everything about him suggested a man who valued appearances and control. "You're the Mitchell girl," he said, not bothering with pleasantries. "You're younger than I expected." "I'm 22, sir, and perfectly capable of managing a household," Sarah replied, keeping her voice steady despite her nervousness. She needed this position desperately. Her funds had dwindled to almost nothing. Clayton looked her over once more, then nodded curtly. "My wife died 2 years ago. I need someone to cook, clean, and manage the house. You'll have Sundays off after morning duties. Wages are $15 a month plus room and board. Your quarters are in the back of the house, separate entrance. You're not to disturb me in the evenings unless there's an emergency." "Yes, sir. Thank you, sir." "One more thing," Clayton added, his voice dropping to something harder. "I saw you looking at the horses. You're here to work in the house, not the stables. My horses are valuable animals, trained by professionals. I don't allow anyone untrained near them, especially not women who think they know how to ride. Stay away from the corrals and the barn. That's not your concern." The words stung more than Sarah wanted to admit. She opened her mouth to protest, to tell him that she had grown up around horses, that she could ride as well as any man, but the stern set of his jaw stopped her. She needed this job. She needed the money and the stability. So, she swallowed her pride and nodded. "I understand, sir." "Good. I'll have one of the men show you to your room. Supper is at 6 o'clock sharp. Don't be late." He turned and walked back into the house, leaving Sarah standing alone on the porch with her carpetbag and a hollow feeling in her chest. She had expected many things coming west, but she had not expected to feel quite so unwelcome. A voice spoke from behind her, gentle and warm. "Don't mind Mr. Burke. His bark is worse than his bite, mostly." Sarah turned to find a young man walking toward her from the direction of the barn. He was probably close to her own age, maybe 24 or 25, with sun-bronzed skin and light brown hair that curled slightly at the edges beneath his worn Stetson. He had kind eyes, green like new grass, and when he smiled, Sarah felt some of the tension ease from her shoulders. "I'm James Hartley," he said, extending his hand. "Folks call me Jamie. I'm one of the ranch hands here." "Sarah Mitchell," she replied, shaking his hand. His grip was firm but careful, calloused from hard work. "I'm the new housekeeper." "I figured as much. Welcome to the Burke Ranch." Jamie picked up her carpetbag before she could protest. "Let me show you to your room. You must be exhausted from traveling." As they walked around to the back of the house, Jamie kept up a steady stream of conversation, pointing out various buildings and telling her about the ranch. His easy manner helped settle Sarah's nerves, and she found herself relaxing despite the less than warm welcome from Clayton Burke. "We've got about 24 hands working here during the busy season," Jamie explained. "Mr. Burke runs one of the biggest cattle operations in the territory. We've also got the finest horses you'll ever see. He imports breeding stock from back east, even some from Europe. They're real beauties." "He told me to stay away from them," Sarah said quietly. Jamie glanced at her, and something flickered in his expression. Did he now? He said he doesn't want anyone untrained near his valuable animals, especially not women who think they know how to ride. Well, that's just ignorant, Jamie said bluntly. Begging your pardon for speaking ill of the boss, but I've known plenty of women who can outride most men. Can you ride, Miss Mitchell? Sarah, please. And yes, I can. My father taught me when I was young. We had horses back in Missouri before. She trailed off, not wanting to delve into painful memories on her first day. Jamie nodded, understanding in his eyes. Well, Sarah, Mr. Burke has his rules, but what he doesn't know won't hurt him. If you ever want to ride, I'd be happy to help you out. I've got a horse, Copper, finest animal on this ranch in my opinion. He's mine, not Burke's, so the old man's rules don't apply. Sarah felt warmth bloom in her chest. That's very kind of you, but I wouldn't want to get you in trouble. I've been working here for 4 years now. I'm the best horse trainer Burke has, even if he doesn't always admit it. He won't fire me over letting someone ride my own horse. Jamie grinned, and Sarah found herself smiling back. He showed her to a small but clean room at the back of the house, with a narrow bed, a dresser, a washstand, and a window that looked out over the western pastures toward the mountains. It was simple, but it was hers, and after weeks of uncertain travel, Sarah felt grateful for even this small space. Thank you, Jamie, she said sincerely. My pleasure. Supper's at 6 in the main dining room. I'll be there along with Mr. Burke and the ranch foreman, Tom Cooper. The other hands eat in the bunkhouse, but Mr. Burke likes to meet with his foreman and me during meals to discuss business. He hesitated at the door. I meant what I said about Copper. Early mornings before the ranch gets busy, or evenings after work. No one would have to know. I'll think about it, Sarah said, though part of her had already made up her mind. After Jamie left, Sarah unpacked her few belongings and changed into a fresh dress, one of only 2 she owned that were suitable for her position. She washed her face and hands, pinned up her dark brown hair more neatly, and tried to prepare herself for her first evening in her new home. At 10 minutes to 6, she made her way to the kitchen, a large room with a modern cast-iron stove, a good-sized work table, and shelves stocked with provisions. Someone, probably Clayton Burke, had left a note on the table with instructions for the evening meal: cold roast beef, potatoes, vegetables from the root cellar, and bread. Simple enough, though Sarah would have preferred more time to prepare something fresh. She worked quickly, heating the beef and preparing the vegetables, slicing bread, and arranging everything on serving platters. At precisely 6 o'clock, she carried the food into the dining room, where Clayton Burke sat at the head of a long table with Jamie on one side and another man, presumably Tom Cooper, on the other. Tom was older than Jamie, perhaps in his late 30s, with weathered features and sharp dark eyes that missed nothing. He nodded politely to Sarah as she served the meal, but said nothing. Clayton barely acknowledged her presence, launching immediately into a discussion about fence repairs in the north pasture. Sarah returned to the kitchen and prepared her own plate, eating alone at the work table. She had expected this, had known that, as a housekeeper, she would not be dining with her employer, but the loneliness of it struck her nonetheless. She thought of her aunt's warm kitchen back in Kansas City, of the laughter and conversation that had filled mealtimes, and felt a wave of homesickness wash over her. She cleaned the kitchen after the men finished eating, washed and dried every dish, and put everything away with meticulous care. When she finally returned to her small room, darkness had fallen, and through her window she could see lights in the bunkhouse and hear the faint sound of men's voices and someone playing a harmonica. Sarah lay in her narrow bed, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the ranch settling for the night, and wondered what she had gotten herself into. This was supposed to be a new beginning, a chance to build a life out west, but instead, she felt more alone than ever. The only bright spot had been Jamie's kindness, his offer to let her ride his horse, and even that felt dangerous, like accepting charity she had no right to claim. She fell asleep eventually, exhausted from travel and emotion, and dreamed of horses running free across endless plains. The next morning, Sarah woke before dawn, as was her habit. She dressed quickly in the dim light, braided her hair, and made her way to the kitchen. She had bread to bake, breakfast to prepare, and a house to familiarize herself with. Work had always been her refuge, and she threw herself into it now, grateful for the distraction. By the time Clayton Burke appeared for breakfast at 7 o'clock, Sarah had fresh biscuits, scrambled eggs, bacon, and coffee ready. He ate in silence, reading through some papers, and left without a word of thanks or criticism. Sarah told herself that no news was good news and continued with her work. The house was large and took most of the morning to clean properly. Sarah swept, dusted, and scrubbed, taking pride in her work, even if no one seemed to notice. Around noon, she prepared a cold lunch and left it in the dining room, then took a short break to eat her own meal. She was washing her lunch dishes when Jamie appeared at the kitchen door, hat in hand, grinning like he had a secret. "Afternoon, Sarah. How's your first full day treating you?" "Well enough," she replied, drying her hands on her apron. "Everything is so new. You'll settle in soon enough. Listen, I'm about to work with Copper in the round pen. Would you like to come watch? It's not riding, so you wouldn't be breaking any rules, and I thought you might enjoy seeing the horses up close." Sarah hesitated only a moment before nodding. "I'd like that very much." She followed Jamie out to the round pen near the barn, where a beautiful copper-colored horse waited, its coat gleaming like a new penny in the afternoon sun. The horse was a quarter horse, stocky and strong, with intelligent eyes and a calm demeanor that spoke of good training and a gentle nature. "This is Copper," Jamie said, affection clear in his voice. "I've had him for 3 years now. Raised him from a colt. He's the smartest horse I've ever known." Sarah watched as Jamie worked with Copper, guiding the horse through various exercises with nothing but voice commands and subtle body language. It was clear that the bond between man and horse ran deep, built on trust and mutual respect. The way Jamie moved, the quiet confidence in his voice, told Sarah that he was more than just a ranch hand. He was a true horseman, someone who understood these animals on an instinctive level. "He's beautiful," Sarah said when Jamie paused to let Copper rest. "You're very good with him." Jamie's cheeks colored slightly at the compliment. "Thank you. I grew up around horses. My father was a horse trainer back in Colorado before he died. I learned everything from him." He stroked Copper's neck gently. "Would you like to meet him properly?" Sarah's heart leaped. "May I?" "Come on over, slow and easy." Sarah approached the fence, then climbed over carefully, aware of Jamie watching to make sure she moved correctly around the horse. Copper turned his head to look at her, ears forward with curiosity, and Sarah extended her hand, letting him smell her before she touched him. "That's right," Jamie said approvingly. "You do know horses." Sarah ran her hand along Copper's neck, feeling the warmth of his coat, the solid strength of him. Something in her chest loosened, a knot she hadn't realized she'd been carrying. She had missed this, missed being around horses, missed the simple peace that came from connecting with these magnificent animals. "I've missed this so much," she admitted quietly. Jamie moved to stand beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him in the cool spring air. "Then, you should ride again, tomorrow morning, before dawn. Meet me here, and I'll let you ride Copper." "I couldn't possibly. Your horse, he's so important to you, and I'm just—" "You're someone who loves horses and deserves the chance to ride," Jamie interrupted gently. "And I can tell just by watching you that you know what you're doing. Copper would be in good hands. Besides," he added with a smile, "I have a feeling you need this." Sarah looked into his green eyes and saw only sincerity and kindness. Something shifted inside her, some barrier she had built around herself beginning to crack. "Tomorrow morning," she agreed, "before dawn. I'll be waiting." That evening, after she had served supper and cleaned the kitchen, Sarah lay in bed feeling more alive than she had in months. The prospect of riding again filled her with a joy she had almost forgotten existed. And more than that, Jamie's kindness had touched something deep inside her. She barely knew him, and yet he was willing to risk his employer's anger just to give her a moment of happiness. She fell asleep with a smile on her face for the first time since arriving at the Burke Ranch. Sarah woke while it was still dark, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She dressed quickly in her most practical dress, grabbed her shawl against the morning chill, and slipped out of the house as quietly as possible. The ranch was silent except for the occasional sound of horses moving in the corrals and the distant howl of a coyote. Jamie was already at the round pen when she arrived, Copper saddled and ready. He smiled when he saw her, and even in the pre-dawn darkness, Sarah could see the warmth in his expression. "Good morning," he said softly. "Ready?" "More than ready," Sarah replied. Jamie led Copper out of the pen and helped Sarah mount. The moment she settled into the saddle, feeling the familiar leather beneath her and the powerful animal responding to her weight, Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. This was freedom. This was home. This was what she had been missing without even fully realizing it. "Take him easy at first," Jamie advised. "Get a feel for each other. He'll respond to the lightest touch on the reins, and he knows leg commands if you want to try them." Sarah nodded, gathering the reins in her hands, and urged Copper forward with a gentle squeeze of her legs. The horse moved smoothly into a walk, and Sarah felt herself relax into the rhythm of his gait. They circled the area near the barn, and then, with Jamie's nod of approval, Sarah guided Copper toward the open pasture. As the first light of dawn began to paint the sky pink and gold, Sarah urged Copper into a trot, then a canter. The wind caught her hair, pulling strands loose from her braid, and she laughed out loud with pure joy. Copper moved beneath her like poetry, responsive and willing, and Sarah felt more herself than she had in years. She rode for perhaps 20 minutes, aware that she needed to get back to prepare breakfast, but treasuring every moment. When she finally guided Copper back to where Jamie waited, her face was flushed and her eyes bright. "That was incredible," she said breathlessly as Jamie helped her dismount. "Thank you, Jamie. Thank you so much." "You're a natural rider," Jamie said, admiration clear in his voice. "Copper took to you like you've been riding him for years. I knew you could do it. He's wonderful. You're wonderful for letting me ride him." Sarah realized how close they were standing, how Jamie's hands had lingered on her waist for just a moment longer than necessary as he helped her down. She stepped back, suddenly aware of the intimacy of the moment, the way the dawn light caught in his eyes. "Same time tomorrow?" Jamie asked, his voice slightly rough. "If you're sure you don't mind." "Sarah, there's nothing I'd mind less." She hurried back to the house, her heart racing, and threw herself into preparing breakfast with renewed energy. When Clayton Burke came to the dining room, he found the table laid with fresh biscuits that were the lightest he'd had since his wife died, eggs cooked to perfection, and coffee that was exactly the right strength. He said nothing, but Sarah thought she detected a slight nod of approval before he began eating. That evening, Tom Cooper stopped by the kitchen after supper. "Mr. Burke asked me to tell you that breakfast was satisfactory," he said gruffly. Sarah smiled. "Please thank him for me." Tom hesitated, then added, "It's good to see someone take pride in their work again. The last housekeeper couldn't cook worth a damn and left the place a mess." "I'm glad to be here," Sarah said, and meant it. The days settled into a pattern. Sarah rose before dawn, met Jamie at the round pen, and rode Copper through the awakening landscape. Those rides became the center of her world, the moments she lived for through all the hours of cooking and cleaning and managing the household. Each morning, Jamie was there waiting, and each morning, the ride felt like a gift. They talked during those early hours, sharing stories about their lives, while Sarah cooled down Copper with an easy walk. Jamie told her about growing up in Colorado, about his father's patient teaching, and his mother who had died when he was young. Sarah shared memories of Missouri, of her father's farm, of how everything had fallen apart after he died when she was 15. Her mother had remarried poorly to a man who drank and gambled, and within 3 years they had lost everything. When her mother died of influenza, Sarah had gone to live with her aunt in Kansas City, working as a seamstress until her aunt's death left her alone again. "That's a lot of loss for one person," Jamie said gently one morning as they walked Copper back toward the barn. "Everyone has their burdens," Sarah replied. "What matters is what we do with them." "You're stronger than you think you are," Jamie said, and the way he looked at her made Sarah's breath catch. As the weeks passed, Sarah began to notice other changes. Jamie started finding excuses to come by the kitchen during the day, offering to help carry heavy pots or chop wood for the stove. He brought her wildflowers once, a simple bouquet of prairie blooms, and seemed embarrassed when she thanked him profusely. Tom Cooper became friendlier, occasionally stopping to chat while she worked. Even some of the other ranch hands began greeting her when they saw her hanging laundry or working in the kitchen garden she had started. The only person who remained distant was Clayton Burke himself. He spoke to Sarah only when necessary, treating her as a useful but ultimately replaceable piece of the household machinery. His coldness bothered her less as time went on, especially as her friendship with Jamie deepened into something more. It was impossible not to notice how her heart sped up when Jamie smiled at her, how she looked forward to their morning rides with an intensity that went beyond simple enjoyment of horses. Jamie seemed equally affected. He found reasons to touch her hand, to stand close, to hold her gaze just a moment longer than friendship required. Neither of them spoke of it directly, but the tension grew like a living thing between them. One morning in late June, nearly 2 months after Sarah's arrival, Jamie suggested they ride farther than usual. "There's a place I want to show you," he said. "A meadow about a mile from here, tucked up against the foothills. It's beautiful this time of year." They rode out together, Jamie on a steady bay gelding named Scout, and Sarah on Copper, who had become as comfortable with her as he was with Jamie. The morning was glorious, the air fresh and clean, the sky an impossible blue that seemed to stretch forever. When they reached the meadow Jamie had described, Sarah caught her breath. Wildflowers carpeted the ground in waves of purple, yellow, and white, and a small creek burbled through the center, its water crystal clear. "Jamie, this is breathtaking," Sarah said, dismounting to walk among the flowers. "I thought you'd like it," Jamie replied, following her. "I come here sometimes when I need to think." They let the horses graze and drink from the creek while they sat in the grass, surrounded by beauty and birdsong. The sun was just cresting the mountains, painting everything in golden light, and Sarah felt a sense of peace so complete it almost frightened her. "I've never thanked you properly," she said quietly, "for letting me ride Copper, for giving me back something I thought I'd lost forever." "You don't need to thank me," Jamie said. He was sitting close to her, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. "It makes me happy to see you happy." "You've made everything better," Sarah continued, the words spilling out before she could stop them. "This place, this job, everything. I was so lonely when I first arrived, and you made me feel welcome, made me feel like I mattered." "Sarah?" Jamie turned to face her fully, and the intensity in his green eyes made her heart hammer. "You do matter. You matter a great deal. To me, you matter more than I probably should say." The air between them seemed to crackle with possibility. Sarah knew she should pull back, should maintain proper distance, but she found she didn't want to. "Jamie, I'm falling in love with you," Jamie said, the words coming out in a rush. "I know it's too soon. I know you might not feel the same way, but I can't keep pretending that my feelings are just friendship. Every morning, I wake up thinking about seeing you. Every day I find excuses to be near you. You're all I think about, Sarah." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She had hoped, had dreamed, but hearing the words spoken aloud made everything real in a way that both thrilled and terrified her. "I feel the same way," she whispered. "I've been falling in love with you since almost the first day, and I didn't know how to tell you." Jamie reached out and took her hand, his calloused fingers intertwining with hers. "I don't have much to offer. I'm just a ranch hand. I make $30 a month and have a bunk in the bunkhouse. But I'm good at what I do, and I work hard, and I would do everything in my power to make you happy." "You already make me happy," Sarah said, squeezing his hand. "Jamie, I don't care about money or status. I care about you, about your kindness and your gentle heart, and the way you see the good in everything." Jamie lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "Then, may I court you properly? I know we have to be careful, that Mr. Burke might not approve, but I want to do this right." "Yes," Sarah said, joy flooding through her. "Yes, I want that very much." They sat together in the meadow as the sun rose higher, holding hands and talking about the future, about dreams and possibilities. When they finally returned to the ranch, Sarah felt like she was floating. Everything looked brighter, more beautiful, more full of promise. But their happiness was short-lived. That evening, as Sarah was preparing supper, Clayton Burke strode into the kitchen with thunder in his face. "Miss Mitchell, a word." Sarah's stomach dropped. She wiped her hands on her apron and turned to face him, trying to keep her expression neutral. "Yes, sir?" "I've heard some disturbing news from one of the hands. He claims he's been seeing you riding out in the early mornings, on one of my horses." Sarah's mind raced. They had been so careful, had only ridden in the pre-dawn hours when no one should have been around. But clearly someone had noticed. "Sir, I can explain." "I made myself very clear when you arrived," Clayton interrupted, his voice cold. "You were not to go near the horses. You deliberately disobeyed my direct order." "I wasn't riding one of your horses," Sarah said quickly. "I was riding Copper, who belongs to Jamie Hartley. I never touched any of your animals." Clayton's eyes narrowed. "Hartley put you up to this?" "No, sir. That is, he offered to let me ride his horse, but only his horse, never yours. We were very careful." "Careful?" Clayton's voice rose. You've been sneaking around my property, doing exactly what I told you not to do, and you call that careful? What else have you been lying about, Miss Mitchell?" "I haven't lied about anything," Sarah said, fighting to keep her voice steady even as panic rose in her chest. "I've done my work, done it well, and I've never touched your horses. Jamie's horse is his own property." "Jamie," Clayton repeated, his tone making the name sound like an accusation. "So you and Hartley have become quite friendly, have you?" Sarah felt her cheeks flush. "Jamie has been kind to me, that's all." "I doubt that very much." Clayton studied her with cold assessment. "You're dismissed, Miss Mitchell. I want you off my property by tomorrow morning." "What?" The word came out as a gasp. "Sir, please, I need this position. I have nowhere else to go." "You should have thought of that before you decided my rules didn't apply to you," Clayton said flatly. "I'll pay you through today, but I want you gone by dawn. That's final." He turned and strode out of the kitchen, leaving Sarah standing frozen by the stove, her entire world crumbling around her. She had been so happy just hours ago, and now everything was falling apart. Where would she go? What would she do? She had almost no money saved, no prospects, no family to turn to. Somehow she finished preparing supper, her hands moving through the familiar motions while her mind spun in frantic circles. She served the meal with trembling hands, and when Jamie arrived for the nightly meeting with Clayton and Tom, his eyes immediately found hers. She tried to shake her head slightly to warn him, but Clayton was already speaking. "Hartley, I'm reassigning you to the North Range starting tomorrow. You'll be working with the team up there for the foreseeable future." Jamie's face went pale. The North Range was the farthest point on the ranch, nearly 20 miles away. The hands assigned there lived in a line shack and only came back to the main ranch once every few weeks for supplies. "Sir, if this is it's about where I need you to work," Clayton said coldly. "That's all you need to know. Be ready to ride out at first light." Jamie's jaw clenched, but he nodded. "Yes, sir." Sarah fled to the kitchen before anyone could see the tears streaming down her face. She heard Jamie follow her a few minutes later, his footsteps quick in the hallway. "Sarah," he said urgently, entering the kitchen and closing the door behind him. "What happened? What did Burke say to you?" "He's firing me," Sarah said, her voice breaking. "Someone saw us riding. He says I disobeyed his orders and he wants me gone by morning." "That's insane. You never touched his horses. Copper is mine." Jamie ran a hand through his hair, frustration and anger warring on his face. "And sending me to the North Range, that's just to keep us apart. He knows there's something between us and he's punishing us both for it." "What am I going to do?" Sarah whispered. "I have nowhere to go, Jamie. No family, barely any money. I'll end up in some mining camp, cooking for prospectors, or worse." Jamie grabbed her hands, holding them tightly. "No, you won't. Listen to me, Sarah. We'll figure this out. I have some money saved. Not much, but enough to help. And I have friends in Laramie who might know of positions. I can't take your money. You've already done so much for me. Sarah, I love you," Jamie said fiercely. "Do you understand? I love you, and I'm not going to stand by and watch you suffer because Burke is a stubborn, controlling old man. We'll find a way." Sarah looked into his eyes and saw determination and love burning there, and something inside her steadied. She wasn't alone. Whatever happened, she had Jamie. "I love you too," she said, "but I don't want you to ruin your life for me. You have a good position here, and Burke might forgive you if you just do what he says and stay away from me." "I don't want forgiveness if it means losing you," Jamie said. He pulled her into his arms, and Sarah went willingly, burying her face against his chest. "I'll quit. We'll leave together and find work somewhere else. There are other ranches, other towns." "Jamie, no. You love it here. The horses, your work, everything." "I love you more," Jamie said simply, and kissed the top of her head. They stood together in the kitchen, holding each other while the world fell apart around them, until Tom Cooper cleared his throat from the doorway. Both of them jumped apart, but Tom held up a hand. "Easy," he said gruffly. "I'm not here to cause trouble. I overheard Burke firing you, Miss Mitchell, and I want you to know that I think he's being unreasonable. You've been the best housekeeper this ranch has seen in years, and you never did anything wrong." "Thank you," Sarah said, wiping at her eyes. "That means a lot." Tom looked at Jamie. "And you, boy, you'd best get your head on straight. If you quit over this, Burke wins. You'll both be out of work and out of luck." He paused, seeming to consider his words carefully. "But if Miss Mitchell had another position to go to, somewhere respectable in town, Then Burke couldn't object to you courting her properly when you come in for supplies. Sarah and Jamie exchanged glances. Do you know of something? Jamie asked. Might be that I do, Tom said slowly. My sister runs a boarding house in Laramie. Good, respectable place. She's been looking for help, someone to assist with the cooking and housekeeping. It doesn't pay as much as here, maybe $10 a month, but it includes room and board, and it's decent work. Hope flickered in Sarah's chest. Do you think she would hire me? I'll ride into town first thing tomorrow and talk to her, Tom said. No promises, but Martha's a good woman. She'll give you a fair shake. He looked between them and shook his head slightly. You two have got it bad for each other. I hope it works out. Lord knows there's little enough happiness in this world. After Tom left, Sarah and Jamie stood close together, not quite touching, but drawing comfort from each other's nearness. A boarding house in Laramie, Sarah said. It would be good work. And I could see you when I come to town, Jamie added. It's not perfect, but it's something. And Sarah, I meant what I said. When I've saved enough money, when I have something real to offer you, I want to marry you, if you'll have me. Sarah's heart swelled. Jamie Hartley, there's nothing I want more than to be your wife, but I won't hold you to a promise made in a moment of crisis. If you change your mind, I won't, Jamie said firmly. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. They talked late into the night, making plans, dreaming of a future together. When Jamie finally left to return to the bunkhouse, Sarah packed her few belongings with a strange mixture of sadness and hope. She was leaving the Burke ranch, leaving the place that had been her home for only 2 short months, but she was leaving with love and the promise of a future. The next morning, Sarah rose before dawn one last time. She met Jamie at the round pen, and they rode together through the meadow he had shown her, watching the sun rise over the mountains. Copper seemed to sense the significance of the moment, moving with unusual gentleness beneath her. When they returned, Tom was waiting with his horse saddled. I'm heading to town now, he said. Miss Mitchell, gather your things. You can ride behind me if you don't mind a long trip. Thank you, Sarah said gratefully. Thank you for helping us. Tom shrugged, looking uncomfortable with the gratitude. Just doing what's right. Burke is a fair man in most things, but he's got a blind spot about control. Probably comes from losing his wife so sudden. He holds on too tight to what he can control. Sarah said goodbye to Jamie in the barn, away from prying eyes. He held her close, and she memorized the feel of him, the warmth and strength and kindness. I'll come to town as soon as I can, he promised. 2 weeks, maybe 3. I'll talk to Burke about getting some time off. I'll be waiting, Sarah said. And Jamie, thank you for giving me back the sky, for letting me ride, for everything. Thank you for making me believe in love again, Jamie replied, and kissed her gently. The ride to Laramie took several hours, and by the time they arrived, Sarah was stiff and tired. The boarding house stood on a quiet street near the center of town. A 2-story building painted a cheerful yellow with white trim. Tom led her to the front door and knocked firmly. The woman who answered was in her 40s, with kind brown eyes and streaks of gray in her dark hair. She was shorter than Sarah, pleasantly plump, and had the same direct gaze as her brother. Martha, this is Miss Sarah Mitchell, Tom said. Sarah, my sister, Martha Cooper. Tom wrote me a letter last week saying you might be coming, Martha said, studying Sarah with the same assessing look her brother had. Said you were a hard worker and a good cook who was getting a raw deal from his employer. I try my best at everything I do, Sarah said honestly. I need work desperately, ma'am, and I promise you won't regret hiring me if you're willing to give me a chance. Martha smiled. Well, you're honest at least. Come in, let's talk. Tom tipped his hat to both of them and headed off to handle other business in town, leaving Sarah to follow Martha inside. The boarding house was clean and comfortable, with worn but well-maintained furniture and the smell of fresh bread in the air. Martha led her to the kitchen, a large space with a big stove and plenty of workspace. Over tea and sandwiches, Martha explained the position. I have 6 boarders currently, working men mostly. Plus, I rent rooms to travelers passing through. I need help with the cooking, cleaning, and laundry. It's hard work, but I pay fair and I treat my employees well. Room and board, plus $10 a month, 1 day off per week. Are you interested? Very much so, Sarah said. Tom mentioned there's a young man, Martha said, her eyes twinkling. One of Burke's cowboys. Sarah felt her cheeks heat. Jamie Hartley, he and I are courting, or we hope to be. Tom speaks highly of this Jamie, says he's a good man, hard worker, doesn't drink or gamble, That true?" "Every word of it," Sarah said earnestly. "He's the best man I've ever known." Martha nodded, satisfied. "Then I won't object to him calling on you here, as long as everything stays proper. I run a respectable house, and I expect my employees to uphold that reputation." "Of course," Sarah said quickly. "I would never do anything inappropriate." "Well then, Miss Mitchell, I think we have an agreement. You can start today if you're willing. I'll show you to your room, and then we'll get you familiar with the kitchen and the daily routine." Relief and gratitude washed over Sarah in equal measure. "Thank you, Miss Cooper. Thank you so much. You won't regret this." "I don't think I will," Martha said warmly. "Welcome to the Laramie boarding house, Sarah." The days that followed were busy, but good. Sarah threw herself into her new work, learning the rhythms of the boarding house and the preferences of the various boarders. She cooked hearty meals, kept the rooms spotless, and helped Martha with the endless stream of laundry that 6 working men and various travelers produced. The work was hard, but Martha was kind and fair, and the boarders were respectful. More than that, Sarah felt free in a way she hadn't at the Burke Ranch. Martha treated her as an equal, not a servant, and the other woman's cheerful conversation and easy laughter made the days pass quickly. They fell into an easy friendship, and Sarah found herself sharing things about her past, her dreams, her love for Jamie. "That boy is lucky to have won your heart," Martha said one evening as they sat together mending linens. "Not every man finds a woman who loves him for who he is rather than what he has." "I'm the lucky one," Sarah said softly. "Jamie gave me back something I thought I'd lost. He made me feel like I mattered again." 2 weeks after Sarah's arrival in Laramie, Jamie rode into town. Sarah was in the kitchen when she heard the knock at the front door, and Martha's voice greeting someone. Then Martha appeared in the kitchen doorway, smiling. "Sarah, you have a visitor. A very dusty, road-weary visitor who looks like he rode straight through to get here." Sarah's heart leaped. She quickly checked her appearance in the small mirror by the door, smoothing her hair and straightening her apron, then hurried to the front parlor where Martha received guests. Jamie stood by the window, his hat in his hands, and the moment he saw Sarah, his face lit up with such joy that she felt tears prick her eyes. He looked thinner, more worn, and she knew the last 2 weeks at the North Range had been hard on him. "Sarah," he said, and she crossed the room to him, propriety forgotten. "Jamie, you're here." They stood close, not quite embracing with Martha watching benevolently from the doorway, but their hands found each other and held tight. "I told Burke I needed 2 days in town for personal business," Jamie said. "He wasn't happy about it, but Tom backed me up, said I'd earned the time. I have until tomorrow evening." "Then let's not waste a single moment," Sarah said. With Martha's permission and blessing, Sarah and Jamie spent the afternoon walking through Laramie. It was a frontier town, rough around the edges but growing rapidly with the railroad bringing new settlers and business. They walked along the main street, looking in shop windows, talking about everything and nothing. Jamie bought Sarah a ribbon for her hair from the general store, pale blue like the Wyoming sky, and the simple gift made her happier than any expensive present could have. They found a small restaurant and shared supper, sitting across from each other at a tiny table in the corner, holding hands beneath the tablecloth and talking in low voices about their dreams for the future. "I've been thinking," Jamie said as they finished their meal, "about what we talked about before you left the ranch, about getting married." Sarah's breath caught. "Jamie, hear me out," he continued. "I know I don't have much saved yet, maybe $50 total. But I've been doing some asking around, and there's a ranch up near Sheridan that's looking for a head horse trainer. The pay is better, $45 a month, and they provide a small house for married employees. I could apply for it, and if I got the position, we could get married and start our life together properly." "Sheridan is a long way from here," Sarah said, though her heart was racing with excitement. "I know, but it would be ours, Sarah, our own place, our own start. I'd work hard to make you happy, to give you a good life. And eventually, maybe we could even buy our own small piece of land, raise horses ourselves." Jamie's green eyes were bright with hope and determination. "I'm not asking you to marry me right this moment. I want to do this right, give you a proper courtship. But I need to know if you'd be willing, eventually, if you can see a future with me." "I can see it clear as day," Sarah said, squeezing his hands. "And yes, Jamie, when the time is right, I would be honored to be your wife." The smile that spread across Jamie's face was like the sun breaking through clouds. He raised her hand to his lips and kissed it gently, his eyes never leaving hers. Then, I'll work as hard as I can to make that day come soon. I promise you, Sarah Mitchell, I'm going to build us a life we can be proud of. They walked back to the boarding house as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. At the front steps, Jamie pulled Sarah into a proper embrace, holding her close. I have to leave early tomorrow morning to make it back in time, he said, but I'll come back as soon as I can. And I'll write to that ranch in Sheridan, see about the position. Be careful at the North Range, Sarah said, and don't anger Mr. Burke. As much as I dislike how he treated us, I don't want you to lose your position before we're ready. I'll be careful, Jamie promised. He cupped her face in his hands and kissed her, a gentle kiss full of promise and longing. I love you, Sarah. I love you too, she whispered against his lips. The next morning, Sarah rose early to prepare breakfast for Jamie before he left. They sat together in the quiet kitchen, drinking coffee and talking in low voices while the rest of the house still slept. When the time came for him to leave, Sarah walked him to where Copper waited, saddled and ready. Until next time, Jamie said, mounting up. Until next time, Sarah echoed, and watched him ride out of town with the rising sun at his back. The weeks that followed settled into a new routine. Sarah worked at the boarding house, saving every penny she could spare, and Jamie made the long ride to Laramie whenever Burke would grant him time off. It wasn't often enough, sometimes 3 or 4 weeks between visits, but each reunion was sweet and made the separation bearable. Jamie wrote letters too, delivered by the supply wagons that made regular runs between the ranch and town. His letters were simple but heartfelt, full of details about his work and declarations of love that made Sarah's heart swell. She wrote back just as faithfully, telling him about life at the boarding house, about the boarders and Martha's kindness, about how she was saving money toward their future. In July, Jamie received a response from the ranch in Sheridan. They were interested in his experience and invited him to come for an interview. The trip would take several days, and Burke was reluctant to let him go during the busy summer season. But Tom Cooper intervened again, offering to take on some of Jamie's duties. That Cooper is a good man, Martha said when Sarah shared the news. Not many foremen would stick their neck out like that for a junior hand. He seems to think Jamie and I deserve a chance at happiness, Sarah replied. I'll be forever grateful to him. Jamie made the trip to Sheridan in early August. He was gone for a week, and Sarah spent the time in an agony of hope and worry. What if they didn't hire him? What if they did, but the position wasn't as good as advertised? What if something happened to him on the long journey? When Jamie finally returned, he came straight to the boarding house, and the moment Sarah saw his face, she knew the news was good. They hired me, he said, sweeping her into his arms right there in Martha's front parlor, propriety forgotten. The ranch is beautiful, Sarah. Big operation, good horses, and the owner seemed like a fair man. The house they're offering is small but solid, 2 rooms and a kitchen, and the pay is exactly what they promised, $45 a month. When do you start? Sarah asked, laughing and crying at the same time. September 1st. That gives us 3 weeks. Jamie set her down and took both her hands. 3 weeks to plan a wedding, if you're willing. I know it's fast, but I don't want to wait anymore. I want to start our life together. Yes, Sarah said without hesitation. Yes, let's get married. Martha, who had been watching with tears in her eyes, stepped forward. I'll help with the arrangements. We can have the ceremony here if you'd like, and I know the minister at the community church. He's a good man. He'll marry you proper. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of activity. Sarah continued her work at the boarding house, but spent every spare moment preparing for the wedding and her new life. Martha proved invaluable, helping Sarah sew a simple but pretty wedding dress from fabric Jamie bought at the general store. Pale cream cotton with tiny blue flowers that matched the ribbon he'd given her months ago. Jamie divided his time between the ranch and Laramie, working his notice with Clayton Burke and preparing for the move to Sheridan. He wrote a formal letter of resignation, thanking Burke for the opportunity, but explaining that he had accepted a better position elsewhere. Burke, according to Tom Cooper, received the news coldly, but without surprise. He knew he couldn't keep you forever, not after how he treated you and Miss Sarah, Tom told Jamie. He's a stubborn man, but he's not stupid. He knows he lost a good trainer over his own pride. On the last Saturday in August, Sarah Mitchell and Jamie Hartley were married in Martha Cooper's front parlor. The ceremony was simple, attended by Martha, Tom Cooper, a few of the boarding house residents, and several of Jamie's friends from the ranch. Sarah wore her new dress and carried a bouquet of wildflowers that Jamie had picked that morning. Jamie wore his best clothes, his hair slicked back and his face shining with happiness. The minister spoke about love and commitment, about building a life together through good times and hard times, and when he pronounced them husband and wife, Jamie kissed Sarah with such tender joy that several of the guests wiped away tears. Martha hosted a small reception with cake and punch, and the guests offered congratulations and well wishes. Tom Cooper shook Jamie's hand firmly. "You take care of her, boy. She's a good woman." "I will, sir. I promise you that. And if Burke ever gets his head out of his rear end and asks about her, I'll tell him she's happier than she ever would have been working for him." Sarah hugged Martha tightly, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you for everything, for giving me a chance, for helping with the wedding, for being such a good friend." "You write to me when you get settled," Martha said, her own eyes wet. "And if you ever need anything at all, you let me know. You're like a daughter to me, Sarah Hartley." Sarah Hartley. The name felt wonderful, felt right, felt like coming home. That night, Sarah and Jamie stayed in a small hotel in Laramie, the first night of their married life. They lay together in the narrow bed, holding each other close, talking about the future and marveling at how far they had come from that first morning when Jamie had offered to let Sarah ride his horse. "I knew from the start there was something special about you," Jamie said, stroking her hair gently. "The way you looked at Copper, the longing in your eyes, I wanted to give you that joy back." "You gave me so much more than that," Sarah replied. "You gave me love and hope and a future. You saw me when I felt invisible." "I'll always see you," Jamie promised, "every day for the rest of our lives." They traveled to Sheridan the next week, a journey that took 3 days by wagon. Jamie had sold Scout back to Burke, but had kept Copper, of course, and Sarah rode beside him as they made their way north through Wyoming Territory. The landscape changed as they traveled, the grasslands giving way to rolling hills and, eventually, the beginnings of the mountains. The ranch where Jamie would work was called the Bar T, owned by a man named Thomas Whitmore, who had made his fortune in cattle and was now investing in quality horses. The house Jamie had been promised sat on a small rise overlooking the corrals, a simple structure with wooden walls and a shingled roof. It had 2 rooms, as promised, plus a small kitchen, and to Sarah it looked like a palace. "It's perfect," she said, standing in the doorway and looking around at the empty space. "Absolutely perfect." They spent the first week settling in, buying basic furniture from a store in Sheridan, making the house into a home. Sarah sewed curtains for the windows and planted a small garden beside the kitchen door. Jamie reported for work and immediately impressed Thomas Whitmore with his knowledge and skill with horses. Life on the Bar T was everything they had hoped for and more. Jamie's work was challenging but fulfilling, and he came home each evening with stories about the horses he was training and the other hands he worked with. Sarah kept house and learned to cook over the small stove, experimenting with recipes and discovering that she had more freedom here to try new things than she ever had working for someone else. On Sundays, they would ride together, just as they had in those early mornings at the Burke Ranch. Copper was joined by a gentle mare that Thomas Whitmore sold to Jamie at a good price, a chestnut named Rosie, and Sarah and Jamie explored the countryside around Sheridan, discovering meadows and streams and quiet places where they could be alone together. In October, Sarah realized she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks, but when she finally worked up the courage to see the doctor in Sheridan, he confirmed it. The baby would arrive in May, he said, and Sarah floated home on a cloud of joy and terror in equal measure. Jamie's reaction when she told him was everything she could have hoped for. He whooped with delight, picked her up, and spun her around, then immediately set her down gently, apologizing for being too rough. "We're having a baby," he kept saying, wonderment in his voice. "Sarah, we're going to be parents." "Are you happy?" Sarah asked, needing to hear him say it. "Happy doesn't even begin to cover it," Jamie replied, pulling her close. "You've made me the luckiest man alive." The winter was harsh that year, with heavy snows and bitter cold, but their small house stayed warm and cozy. Jamie worked shorter days during the worst of the weather, focusing on the horses kept in the barn, and he spent the long evenings at home with Sarah, reading aloud from the few books they owned, or simply talking by the fire. They discussed names for the baby, made plans for the future, and dreamed of the family they were building. In February, a letter arrived from Martha Cooper. She wrote with news from Laramie, including the surprising information that Clayton Burke had remarried, a widow from Cheyenne who had come to keep house for him and had apparently softened some of his harder edges. Tom Cooper was doing well and sent his regards. The boarding house was thriving, and Martha missed Sarah but was happy to hear about her pregnancy. Sarah wrote back immediately, sharing details about her life in Sheridan and thanking Martha again for everything she had done. She also wrote to Tom Cooper, thanking him for his kindness and letting him know how well things had turned out. As Sarah's pregnancy progressed, Jamie became increasingly protective and attentive. He insisted on doing all the heavy work around the house, brought her wildflowers whenever he could find them poking through the late snow, and talked to her belly every night, telling their unborn child about the horses and the ranch and how much he and Sarah were looking forward to meeting them. "Do you hope for a boy or a girl?" Sarah asked one evening in March as they lay in bed together. "I don't care one bit," Jamie said honestly. "As long as the baby is healthy and you're safe, that's all that matters to me." "I hope they have your eyes," Sarah said softly. "Those beautiful green eyes that I fell in love with." "And I hope they have your strength and your kind heart," Jamie replied, kissing her forehead. On May 15th, after a long and difficult labor, Sarah gave birth to a healthy baby boy. They named him Daniel James Hartley, Daniel for Sarah's father, and James for his own father. And the moment the doctor placed the tiny, red-faced infant in Sarah's arms, she felt her heart expand with a love so fierce it took her breath away. Jamie held his son for the first time, with tears streaming down his face, his large, work-roughened hands impossibly gentle as he cradled the baby. "Hello, Daniel," he whispered. "Welcome to the world, son. Your mama and I have been waiting so long to meet you." The first months of Daniel's life were exhausting, but wonderful. Sarah and Jamie took turns walking the floor with him when he cried in the night, changed countless diapers, and marveled at every tiny change and development. Jamie proved to be a natural father, patient and loving, and Sarah fell in love with him all over again watching him with their son. In August, Thomas Whitmore approached Jamie with an offer. "You're the best horse trainer I've ever employed," he said bluntly. "I want to make you my head trainer permanently, with a raise to $55 a month. Plus, I'm willing to sell you the house you're living in and an acre of land around it. You can pay it off over time, and it'll be yours free and clear." Jamie could barely believe his ears. "Sir, that's incredibly generous." "It's good business," Thomas replied. "I want to keep you here, Hartley. You're an asset to this ranch, and I'd hate to lose you to some other outfit. What do you say?" Jamie shook his hand firmly. "I say yes, sir, and thank you." That evening, Jamie burst into the house with the news, and Sarah cried with happiness. "Our own land," she said wonderingly. "A real home that belongs to us." "We'll add on to the house," Jamie said, already planning. "Another room for Daniel, maybe a proper parlor, and I'll build you a bigger kitchen. You deserve it, Sarah." "I don't need anything more than what we have right now," Sarah said, holding Daniel on her hip and looking at her husband with all the love in her heart. "I have you and our son and a home of our own. That's more than I ever dreamed possible." Over the next few years, life continued to bless them. Jamie thrived in his role as head trainer, and his reputation spread throughout Wyoming Territory. Ranchers came from as far away as Montana to buy horses he had trained, and the extra income allowed the Hartleys to save money and improve their home. Jamie built the additions he had promised, expanding the house to 4 rooms plus a proper kitchen. And Sarah planted fruit trees and expanded her garden. In the spring of 1882, Sarah gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Emma Rose. She had Jamie's green eyes and Sarah's dark hair, and she was the most beautiful thing either of them had ever seen after Daniel, who was now 3 years old and delighted to have a baby sister. The family settled into a comfortable rhythm. Jamie worked with the horses, his skill and reputation growing year by year. Sarah managed the household and raised the children, teaching Daniel his letters and numbers and singing lullabies to Emma. On Sundays, they still rode together when the weather permitted, Daniel sitting in front of Jamie on Copper, who was getting older but was still sound, and Sarah holding Emma carefully as she rode Rosie. In 1883, Thomas Whitmore decided to retire and moved to Denver to be near his daughter. He offered Jamie the chance to buy the entire horse training operation, including the barn, corrals, and all the equipment, for a price that was more than fair. It would mean taking on debt, but it would also mean owning their own business. Sarah and Jamie discussed it long into the night, weighing the risks and rewards. Finally, Sarah said, "I believe in you, Jamie. I believe in your skill and your work ethic. If you want to do this, we'll find a way to make it work." With a loan from the bank in Sheridan and using all their savings, Jamie bought the training operation. He renamed it Hartley Horse Training, and word spread quickly that the business was under new ownership. Jamie's reputation was strong enough that clients continued to come, and within a year, the business was not just surviving, but thriving. By 1885, 7 years after that first morning, when Jamie had offered to let Sarah ride Copper, the Hartley family was prospering. They owned their home and land outright, the training business was successful, and they had 2 healthy, happy children. Sarah sometimes looked around at her life and could hardly believe how far they had come from those uncertain days at the Burke Ranch. One evening in late summer, as Sarah and Jamie sat on their porch watching Daniel and Emma play in the yard, a rider approached the house. As he drew closer, Sarah recognized Tom Cooper, older and grayer, but still sitting tall in the saddle. "Tom!" she exclaimed, rising to greet him. "What a wonderful surprise." Tom dismounted and accepted her hug warmly. "Hello, Sarah. Jamie, I was passing through Sheridan on business and thought I'd stop by to see how you folks were doing." They invited him in for supper, and over a meal of roasted chicken and vegetables from Sarah's garden, Tom caught them up on news from Laramie. Martha was well, still running her boarding house. Clayton Burke was still operating his ranch, though he had slowed down considerably and let his new wife manage much of the household. And Tom himself had been promoted to manager of Burke's entire operation, with a substantial increase in pay. "I've thought about you two often over the years," Tom said, as they lingered over coffee after the children had been put to bed. "Wondered if things worked out the way you hoped." "Better than we hoped," Jamie said, taking Sarah's hand. "We have everything we ever wanted and more." "I can see that," Tom said, looking around at the comfortable home, the happy family. "Burke asked about you once, you know, about a year after you left. Asked if I'd heard anything about the housekeeper who ran off with one of his hands." "What did you tell him?" Sarah asked. "I told him that she married the man, and they were doing just fine, no thanks to him." Tom grinned. He got a funny look on his face, like maybe he realized he'd made a mistake letting you both go. But by then it was too late, of course. "I don't hold any grudge against Mr. Burke," Sarah said honestly. "If things had happened differently, I might never have had the courage to leave, and Jamie and I might never have had this life. Sometimes the hard things lead us to where we're supposed to be." "That's a generous way of looking at it," Tom said. "You always were a kind soul, Sarah." Tom stayed the night in their guest room and left the next morning with promises to visit again and to send their love to Martha. After he rode away, Sarah stood with Jamie watching the dust settle on the road. "It's strange," she said. "I can barely remember that frightened girl who arrived at the Burke Ranch 7 years ago. So much has changed." "You were never just frightened," Jamie said. "You were brave and strong even then. You just needed someone to see it." "You saw it," Sarah replied, leaning against him. "You saw me when I felt invisible, and you gave me the chance to fly." "By letting you ride my horse?" Jamie smiled. "By letting me ride your best horse every single day, even when it meant risking everything," Sarah said. "That was when I knew you were special, Jamie, when I knew you saw more in me than I saw in myself." Over the next few years, the Hartley family continued to grow and prosper. In 1887, Sarah gave birth to their 3rd child, another boy they named Thomas William, called Tommy, honoring Tom Cooper, who had been such a good friend to them. Copper passed away peacefully in his sleep that same year, old and well-loved, and Jamie buried him on their property with a simple marker that read, "Copper, faithful friend." In 1890, when Daniel was 12 and already showing his father's gift with horses, Jamie hired him as an apprentice in the training business. Emma, at 8, preferred helping her mother in the house and garden, but she loved to ride and could often be found in the corrals watching her father and brother work. Tommy, at 3, toddled everywhere, getting into everything, and keeping Sarah constantly busy. The business expanded further when Jamie began offering riding lessons to the families in Sheridan, particularly teaching children how to ride safely. Sarah sometimes helped with the lessons for the younger children, drawing on her own love of horses and her patient nature. It became a family affair, with everyone contributing according to their abilities. In the summer of 1892, Sarah and Jamie celebrated their 15th wedding anniversary. Martha Cooper traveled from Laramie for the occasion, bringing with her news that she was retiring from the boarding house and moving to live with her daughter in Cheyenne. She looked older, her hair completely gray now, but her eyes were as kind as ever. "I wanted to see you all one more time before I settled into being an old woman," she told Sarah as they sat together on the porch watching the children play. "And to tell you how proud I am of what you've built here. I owe so much of this to you," Sarah said. "If you hadn't given me that job, hadn't helped with the wedding, who knows where I'd be now?" "You'd be exactly where you are," Martha said firmly, "because you and Jamie were meant to be together, and people like you two always find their way. I just helped smooth the path a little." That evening, the Hartleys hosted a party with friends and neighbors from the surrounding ranches. There was food and music and dancing, and as Sarah waltzed with Jamie under the stars, she felt the same rush of love and happiness she had felt on their wedding day. 15 years, Jamie said, holding her close. "And I love you more now than I did then, which I wouldn't have believed was possible." "We've built a good life," Sarah replied. "A family, a home, a business, everything we dreamed of that day in the meadow." "Do you ever think about that morning when I first let you ride Copper?" Jamie asked. "How everything changed from that moment." "I think about it often," Sarah said. "How brave you were to defy Burke's rules. How kind you were to see what I needed even when I couldn't say it. You gave me back my wings, Jamie." "And you gave me a reason to use mine," Jamie replied, kissing her gently. "You made me want to be better, to build something real. Everything good in my life started the day you arrived at the Burke Ranch." As the years continued to pass, the Hartley family became a fixture in the Sheridan community. Jamie's reputation as a horse trainer spread throughout Wyoming and beyond, and he trained horses for some of the biggest ranches in the region. Daniel grew into a fine young man, inheriting his father's skill and patience with horses, and by the time he turned 20 in 1898, he was running much of the day-to-day training business. Emma blossomed into a lovely young woman with her mother's kindness and her father's determination. She surprised everyone by deciding she wanted to become a teacher, and with her parents' full support, she attended normal school in Cheyenne and returned to Sheridan to teach at the local school. Tommy, the youngest, turned out to be the wild one of the family, always looking for adventure. He loved horses but lacked the patience for training, preferring to ride hard and fast across the open range. Jamie worried about him, but Sarah reminded her husband that every child had to find their own path. In 1900, Daniel married a girl from a neighboring ranch, a sweet-natured young woman named Lucy, and they built a small house on a corner of the Hartley property. When their first child was born, in 1901, a daughter named Sarah, after her grandmother, Sarah Hartley held her namesake and felt the circle of life continuing. Jamie and Sarah were grandparents now, in their mid-40s, and though they still worked hard, they began to slow down and let the younger generation take over more of the responsibilities. They spent more time together, often riding out to the meadow where Jamie had first told Sarah he loved her, a place that remained special to them throughout their lives. In the summer of 1903, 25 years after Sarah had first arrived at the Burke Ranch, she and Jamie took a trip to Laramie. It had been years since they had been back, and they wanted to see the old places, remember where their story had begun. The Burke Ranch looked much the same, though the house had been repainted and new buildings had been added. They didn't stop, just rode past slowly, remembering. Clayton Burke had died 2 years earlier, Tom Cooper had written to tell them, and the ranch had passed to a nephew from back east. Tom himself had retired and moved to Cheyenne to be near Martha, but Laramie itself had changed dramatically. The small frontier town they remembered had grown into a proper city, with brick buildings and paved streets and all the conveniences of modern life. They found Martha's old boarding house, which was now a shop selling dry goods, and stood outside for a long moment, remembering. "So much has changed," Sarah said softly. "But the important things haven't," Jamie replied, taking her hand. "We're still together. We're still in love. We've built a life and a family. That's what matters." They visited Tom and Martha in Cheyenne on their way home, finding both of them in good health and happy in their retirement. The four of them spent an afternoon reminiscing about the old days, laughing about how things had worked out, despite Clayton Burke's best efforts to keep Sarah and Jamie apart. "He died bitter," Tom said. "Never did learn to let go of his need to control everything. His second wife tried to soften him, but he was set in his ways. I think he regretted how he treated you two, though he never said it directly. I hope he found some peace before the end, Sarah said, meaning it. Life's too short to hold on to anger. On the journey back to Sheridan, Sarah and Jamie talked about their 25 years together, about all the changes and challenges they had faced, about the joy and love that had sustained them through everything. If you could go back to that morning at the Burke Ranch, Jamie asked, knowing everything that would happen, would you change anything? Sarah considered the question carefully. Not a single thing, she said finally. Every moment, good and hard both, brought us to where we are now. I wouldn't risk losing any of it. Not even the fear and uncertainty, the times we didn't know if we'd make it. Especially not those times, Sarah said, because those are the times that proved our love was real, that we were strong enough to build this life together. In 1905, Emma married a young lawyer from Sheridan, and Tommy, at 18, announced that he wanted to join the cavalry. Sarah's heart ached at the thought of her youngest going so far away, but she and Jamie gave him their blessing. He promised to write often and visit whenever he could. As Sarah and Jamie moved through their late 40s and into their 50s, they gradually stepped back from the daily running of the business, letting Daniel and Lucy take over completely. Hartley horse training continued to thrive under the younger generation's management, and Jamie found that he enjoyed the slower pace of life, the time to spend with Sarah and their growing number of grandchildren. They still rode together often, though on older, gentler horses now, and they still visited their special meadow every year on their wedding anniversary. It had become a tradition, a way to remember where their love had begun and how far they had come together. On their 30th anniversary in 1908, their children surprised them with a party that brought together friends and family from all over Wyoming. Tom and Martha came from Cheyenne, now quite elderly, but still bright-eyed and happy to celebrate. Daniel and Lucy were there with their 3 children. Emma brought her husband and their new baby. Tommy managed to get leave from his cavalry post and rode in with his unit, looking dashing in his uniform. As Sarah stood surrounded by her family, watching Jamie laugh with their grandchildren, she felt overwhelmed with gratitude for the life they had built together. It hadn't always been easy. There had been hard times, lean years, moments of doubt and fear, but they had faced everything together, and love had carried them through. Late that night, after all the guests had left and the house was quiet, Sarah and Jamie sat together on their porch, holding hands and watching the stars. 30 years, Sarah said wonderingly. Sometimes it feels like yesterday that you first offered to let me ride Copper. Other times, it feels like we've been together forever. Both are true, Jamie said. Every day with you feels new, but I also can't remember a time when I didn't love you. Do you remember what you said to me that first morning when you offered to let me ride? Jamie thought for a moment. I said my horse was mine, not Burke's, so his rules didn't apply. You said you'd be happy to help me, Sarah corrected gently. You said if I ever wanted to ride, you'd be there. And you have been, Jamie. Every single day for 30 years, you've been there. Not just letting me ride horses, but letting me ride through life beside you, as your equal and your partner. You were always meant to ride free, Jamie said. Burke was wrong to try to keep you grounded, wrong about so many things. But maybe it had to happen that way, Sarah mused. Maybe I needed to be told I couldn't, so that when you said I could, I understood how precious that gift was, how precious you were. Jamie pulled her closer, and they sat in comfortable silence, listening to the night sounds of the ranch, the distant sound of horses moving in the corrals, the wind sighing through the cottonwood trees they had planted years ago. I'd do it all again, Jamie said finally. Every moment, every challenge, every joy. As long as it was with you. So would I, Sarah replied, 1,000 times over. The years continued their steady march forward. The children grew and had children of their own. The ranch prospered and expanded. Hartley horse training became known throughout the region as the best place to buy a well-trained horse or learn to ride properly. Daniel proved to be as skilled a businessman as he was a horseman, and under his leadership, the family business grew beyond anything Jamie and Sarah had imagined in those early days. In 1912, Sarah turned 56 and Jamie turned 58. They were grandparents to 8 grandchildren now, with another on the way, and they had the satisfaction of seeing their children happy and successful. Emma was a beloved teacher in Sheridan, her gentle patience making her a favorite with her students. Tommy had risen to the rank of sergeant in the cavalry and was stationed at Fort Robinson in Nebraska, close enough to visit regularly. Daniel and Lucy had made the horse training business into something truly remarkable. Sarah and Jamie spent their days quietly now, content to watch the younger generations carry on the work they had started. They tended their garden, read together in the evenings, and went on gentle rides through the countryside they loved. Their hair was gray now, their movements slower, but the love between them had only deepened with time. One day in May 1914, as they were preparing to celebrate their 36th wedding anniversary, Jamie surprised Sarah by leading her out to the barn, where a young horse waited, copper-colored like the original Copper, with the same intelligent eyes and gentle temperament. "His name is Copper Jr.," Jamie said, grinning at Sarah's astonished expression. "Daniel bred him special, from Copper's bloodline. He's young yet, only 3, but he's well-trained and gentle. I thought maybe we could train him together, you and me, like old times." Sarah felt tears spring to her eyes. "Jamie, that's the most thoughtful gift. You gave up so much to follow me to Sheridan," Jamie said. "Your position at Martha's, the friends you'd made in Laramie. I wanted to give you something special, something that reminded you of where we started." They spent the summer working with Copper Jr., and Sarah discovered that she still had the touch with horses she had developed so long ago. The young horse responded beautifully to her gentle training methods, and by fall, he was ready to be ridden regularly. Sarah and Jamie would ride out together on Copper Jr. and Rosie's daughter, Rose Red, exploring trails they had ridden dozens of times, but seeing them fresh through the joy of being together. In the winter of 1915, Martha Cooper passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 82. Sarah and Jamie traveled to Cheyenne for the funeral, where they reunited with Tom Cooper and many others whose lives Martha had touched. Tom looked frail, the years weighing heavy on him, but his eyes lit up when he saw Sarah and Jamie. "You two are the best thing that ever came from my interfering," he said, clasping their hands. "Martha always said so. She was so proud of you both." "We owed her so much," Sarah said, her voice thick with tears. "She gave me a job when I needed one, helped me prepare for my wedding, was a true friend." "She loved you like a daughter," Tom said, "and she died happy, knowing you had built such a good life." Tom followed his sister 3 months later, dying quietly at his daughter's home. Sarah and Jamie attended his funeral as well, mourning the loss of the man who had been so instrumental in bringing them together. Without Tom's intervention, without his willingness to help them when Clayton Burke tried to keep them apart, their story might have ended very differently. As Sarah and Jamie moved through their 60s, they found themselves increasingly content to stay close to home. Daniel ran the business entirely now, with his own sons learning the trade as he had learned from Jamie. Emma had grandchildren of her own, students she had taught now, bringing their own children to her classroom. Tommy had left the cavalry and settled in Sheridan, finally ready to put down roots, and married a widow with 2 children of her own. The Hartley family gatherings were large and boisterous now, filled with children and grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren. The ranch house, which had started as 2 small rooms, had been expanded and added onto over the years until it was a sprawling, comfortable home that could accommodate the entire family for Sunday dinners and holiday celebrations. On their 40th wedding anniversary in 1918, the family threw another large celebration. Sarah and Jamie, now 62 and 64, sat together in chairs of honor while their children and grandchildren performed skits and songs, told stories, and presented gifts. It was a day filled with laughter and love, and Sarah felt her heart nearly burst with the joy of it all. That evening, as they had done for 40 years, Sarah and Jamie rode out to their special meadow, just the 2 of them. It was August, the flowers in full bloom, the evening air warm and sweet. They dismounted and sat in the grass, holding hands and watching the sun set behind the mountains. 40 years, Jamie said, shaking his head in wonder. "We've been married for 40 years, Sarah." "The best 40 years of my life," Sarah replied, "every single day." "Do you remember what I said to you in this meadow, the first time I brought you here?" Sarah smiled. "You said you were falling in love with me, that I was all you thought about. I also said I didn't have much to offer, just $30 a month and a bunk in a bunkhouse." Jamie laughed. "I had no idea what we'd build together." "You offered me everything that mattered," Sarah said. "Love and respect and partnership. The chance to be myself. That was worth more than all the money in the world." "You made me want to be better," Jamie said. "Want to build something real. Every good thing in my life came from loving you." They sat in the meadow until the stars came out, talking about their children and grandchildren, about the life they had built, about how grateful they were for every moment they had been given together. And when they finally rode back home in the darkness, guided by memory and love, they rode side by side as they always had, as equals and partners. The years continued to pass, each one bringing new joys and new challenges. In 1920, Wyoming granted women the right to vote in federal elections, building on the territorial voting rights women had held since 1869. Sarah cast her ballot proudly, thinking about how far the world had come since she had first arrived in Wyoming Territory as a young woman of 22. In 1923, Jamie fell seriously ill with pneumonia. For several frightening weeks, Sarah hardly left his bedside, nursing him through the fever and breathing difficulties. Daniel brought doctors from Sheridan, and the entire family prayed for his recovery. Jamie survived, but the illness weakened him, and he never fully regained his former strength. After that, Jamie left the horse training entirely to Daniel and spent his days reading, working in the garden, and sitting on the porch watching the ranch activities. Sarah stayed by his side always, and they spent long hours talking about their lives, their memories, their gratitude for all they had shared. "I'm sorry I can't ride with you anymore," Jamie said one day as Sarah prepared to go out on Copper Jr. "Don't be sorry," Sarah replied, kissing his forehead. "You've given me a lifetime of rides, Jamie, more than I ever dreamed of having, and being here with you, even sitting still, is exactly where I want to be." On their 45th wedding anniversary in 1923, the family gathered once more, though the celebration was quieter than previous years, mindful of Jamie's health. But there was no less love, no less joy in being together. Sarah looked around at her children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, at the legacy of love she and Jamie had built, and felt at peace. That night, alone together in their room, Jamie took Sarah's hand and looked into her eyes with all the love of their 45 years together. "Thank you," he said simply, "for saying yes to that first ride, for saying yes to marrying me, for saying yes to building this life. Thank you for every yes, every moment, every day." "Thank you for seeing me," Sarah replied, tears streaming down her face. "For seeing what I could be, even when I couldn't see it myself. For letting me ride beside you all these years." "I'd do it all again," Jamie said. "Every single moment." "So would I," Sarah whispered. "Every single one." Jamie Hartley passed away peacefully in his sleep on a cool September morning in 1924, with Sarah holding his hand. He was 68 years old, and he died as he had lived, surrounded by love. The funeral was attended by hundreds of people, from family and friends to clients whose horses Jamie had trained, to students Emma had taught, whose families remembered the Hartley name with respect and affection. Sarah grieved deeply for the loss of her husband, her partner, her truest love. But she did not break. Their children and grandchildren surrounded her with love and support, and she found comfort in the life they had built together, the family they had raised, the business that continued to thrive under Daniel's leadership. She continued to live in the ranch house, now surrounded by family, as Daniel and Lucy moved into the main house to care for her. She spent her days in the garden Jamie had helped her plant, working with the flowers and vegetables he had loved. She rode Copper Jr. when the weather was good, though shorter distances now, and she often visited the meadow where Jamie had first told her he loved her, sitting quietly and remembering. Sarah lived for another 8 years after Jamie's death, watching her family continue to grow and flourish. She saw more great-grandchildren born, attended Emma's retirement celebration after 30 years of teaching, welcomed Tommy's stepchildren into the family as if they were her own blood. She was the matriarch of the Hartley family, respected and beloved by all who knew her. On a warm May morning in 1932, 76-year-old Sarah Mitchell Hartley passed away peacefully in her sleep. She was buried beside Jamie on a hill overlooking the ranch, under the endless Wyoming sky they had both loved. Her funeral was as well attended as his had been, a testament to the impact she had made on everyone she encountered. At the funeral, Daniel stood to speak about his mother. He told stories about her kindness, her strength, her determination to see the good in everyone. But the story he lingered on longest was the one he had heard his parents tell many times, about a ranch owner who had said she couldn't ride his horses, and a cowboy who had let her ride his best one every day. "My father gave my mother freedom," Daniel said, his voice thick with emotion. He saw her as an equal when others saw her as less. He gave her wings when others tried to keep her grounded. And in return, my mother gave him everything a man could want: love, partnership, family, home. They built this ranch together, built this family together, built a legacy of love that will continue for generations. That's the lesson they taught us. That true love sees beyond rules and restrictions to the person underneath. That true love gives freedom and receives it in return. That true love builds something lasting. The Hartley family continued to prosper for generations after Sarah and Jamie were gone. The horse training business remained in the family, passed down from Daniel to his sons, and then to their children. The meadow where Jamie had first declared his love to Sarah became known as Sarah's Meadow within the family, and couples would go there to propose, to celebrate anniversaries, to remember the love story that had started it all. In 1950, Emma Hartley, then 70 years old and the last surviving child of Sarah and Jamie, wrote down her parents' love story from Sarah's arrival at the Burke Ranch through their 46 years of marriage. The handwritten manuscript became a treasured family heirloom, passed down through the generations, along with the story itself. The story of Sarah and Jamie, of a ranch owner who said she couldn't ride his horses and a cowboy who let her ride his best one every day, became a legend within the family and throughout Sheridan. It was a story about love and courage, about seeing past restrictions to possibilities, about partnership and equality. It was a story about giving someone wings and watching them soar. And though Sarah and Jamie had been gone from the world for decades, their love remained, woven into every corner of the ranch they had built together, carried in the hearts of every descendant who bore their name, remembered every time someone told the story of how a simple act of kindness and defiance blossomed into a love that lasted a lifetime and beyond. The ranch still stood, the business still thrived, and the descendants of Sarah Mitchell and Jamie Hartley still rode across the Wyoming landscape, free and strong, carrying forward the legacy of two people who had loved each other enough to build something lasting, something true, something beautiful. Their story had ended, but it had also never ended, living on in every generation that followed, a testament to the power of love to transform lives and create miracles from the simplest of beginnings. In the end, it had all started with a horse, a cowboy with a kind heart, and a woman who needed someone to see her for who she truly was. From that simple beginning, an empire of love had been built, and it would stand forever as proof that the greatest adventures begin with a single act of compassion, and the greatest love stories are written by those brave enough to defy convention and see the truth in another person's heart.